In chapters 9 through 11 of Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death, he argues that television is a medium that is incapable of encouraging sustained reflection on matters of fundamental importance and applies it to three topics, the first being religion, the second being politics, and the third being education. The first question I have for this assignment is, to what degree do you share Postman's convictions regarding the use of television in those realms? The second being, why does Postman feel that we should emphasize Huxley rather than Orwell in trying to understand the right of American culture? And the third being, how should J.P. Moreland's insights with respect to the empty self be applied to these issues? And the fourth being, what should be the role of the church in attempting to reverse the cultural realities lamented by Postman? Before I answer those questions, I'm going to go back to the 3 points that I mentioned earlier. The first one being religion. Postman said in chapter 11 that there are two ways by which the spirit of a culture can be shriveled. The first one being Orwellian culture becomes a prison, and the second being the Huxleyan culture becomes a burlesque. Orwell told us that the world is marred by many prison cultures. He said that the gates of the prison are equally impenetrable, that the surveillance is equally rigorous, and that icon worship is equally pervasive, no matter what ideology we lean towards. Huxley teaches that spiritual devastation is more likely to come from an enemy with a smiling face than from one whose countenance exudes suspicion and hate. Huxley had a prophecy in which he called Big Brother does not watch us by his choice, rather, we watch him by ours. For America specifically, Postman believes that Orwell's prophecies are of small relevance, while Huxley's are well underway toward being realized. America is in an experiment with television to accommodate itself to the, quote, technological distractions made possible by the electric plug, as Postman said. That answers the second question that says, why does Postman feel that we should emphasize Huxley rather than Orwell in trying to understand the right of American culture? Postman also said that America is prepared to take arms against a sea of troubles, but it is not prepared to take arms against a sea of amusements. Since America is in an experiment with television, we tend to make idols with our screens and other celebrities along with things that aren't truly important. Going back to chapter 9, Postman discusses the relations between politics and television. And just like religion, politics is just another form of show business. Most of the political show business that we see is through our commercials. Every election year, right around the fall time, we see an increase in political commercials because it's an election year and the candidates want your vote. The problem with this is politicians hire actors and pay them to go and make these commercials, whether it be someone in a job that is acting like they are doing something, or a lady in the grocery store with her kids buying groceries. Politicians hire these actors who will one day become celebrities and pay them to do these political commercials to get your vote. And even though it seems to be for a political cause, it is still very much for entertainment purposes. But the real question is, why do politicians hire actors for these commercials instead of just going on there and speaking publicly about the goals that they want to reach if they get elected president? Postman said, the television commercial is not at all about the character of products to be consumed, but about the character of the consumers of products. Postman said, the television commercial has oriented business away from making products of value and towards making consumers feel valuable, which basically makes the business become a pseudotherapy. And the statement of feeling valuable reminded me of J.P. Moreland's idea of an empty self. I believe the simplest way to fix these issues that is not in a biblical standard would be to turn off our social media, our devices, and our TVs. I say this because the empty self often looks to television as an idol. In chapter 10, Postman talks about education and labels teaching as an amusing activity. In modern schools, it seems like the only way kids learn anything anymore is when it is taught in an amusing manner, whether that be music, singing, video games, anything like that. Children who are taught to by entertainment expect to be taught in an entertaining fashion continuously. In chapter 10, Postman uses Sesame Street as his prime example and says children learn to love school only if it's like Sesame Street. I believe Postman's convictions were spot on, and I agreed with every single one of them, especially in our education system. American children especially are raised so much different than other countries, which is why Postman talked about Huxley's prophecy instead of the things that Orwell had to say, because they are far more relatable to kids, especially in America. When it comes to the American population as a whole, I believe the quickest solution actually lies in our children and the way that our schools teach them and the way that parents raise them. I believe one of the church's biggest roles in these issues is education, or churches can definitely have an impact on our children when it comes to education. But in a sense, I do also believe that the church is corrupted with this, because it seems like we have VBSs that is just music, which is amazing that our kids are learning the Bible in that way. But I also believe that it is also corruptible, just as the school system is. It is great that kids can go and have other friends and get that fellowship, and it is a great way to learn. I actually learned how to memorize John 3:16 through a song, but I also believe that just like the public school system, it is something that can get out of control, and I don't think, like, I believe it should be monitored, because kids also shouldn't go to church with a mindset of they'll learn just through music, just like learning to love school, as long as it's like Sesame Street. And just like J.P. Moreland talked about, the church does have a role in all of this, but I also believe there's the possibility that the church needs to work on itself before it can go and have an influence on our school systems and those on the streets. But the big question is, instead of letting our televisions control us, how can we use education to control television? I'm going to end this with Postman's solution to all of this, and it is not a specific solution. He said we're in a race between education and disaster, and just like Postman said, to people in the Brave New World, the people in the Brave New World were not only laughing instead of thinking, but they did not know what they were laughing about and why they had stopped thinking.